The mountain air was razor-sharp, slicing through the clearing like steel. 8 hunters stood in a loose semicircle, their high-end camouflage spotless, rifles gleaming beneath the pale November sun. At the center, a man knelt in the dirt, his hands trembling as they pressed against the frozen ground. His clothes hung in tatters, his beard matted and unkempt, his face hollowed by hunger and exhaustion. He looked like someone who hadn't eaten properly in weeks. "Lieutenant Colonel." Garrett Mitchell stood over him with his arms folded, a thin smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "So this is the legendary Marine sniper instructor," he said. "This is Iceman." He turned to the others, his voice heavy with mockery. 6 years living on the streets, and he can't even keep his hands steady. And we're supposed to believe he can still shoot? The homeless man didn't respond. His gaze stayed fixed on the rifle lying 5 feet away in the dirt. Remington 700 that felt like it belonged to another lifetime entirely. Garrett crouched closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate, yet loud enough to carry. 5 shots, 800 meters. Miss even once, and you sign over that cabin and disappear. Because honestly, I'm not convinced you even remember which end of the rifle the bullet comes out of." The man looked up. For a brief instant, something flickered behind those empty eyes, something cold, exacting, and utterly unforgiving. Something that had never missed. "Before we continue, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment with your city or country. And if stories of resilience and second chances move you, don't forget to subscribe. Because this story proves that true excellence never dies, it only waits for the moment it's needed again. Now, let's rewind. 5 days earlier, Thomas Brennan stood before a weather-beaten cabin deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a sheet of paper trembling in his hands. The lawyer's words still echoed in his head. "Your uncle left everything to youth the cabin, the land, 15 acres. It's yours, Mr. Brennan." For 6 years, Thomas had lived beneath a bridge in Greenville, South Carolina. He slept on cardboard, scavenged meals from dumpsters, and watched seasons pass through a fog of hunger and cold. The last time he'd had a roof over his head, his wife Karen was still alive. The last time he'd held his daughter Emily, she was 19 and terrified of him. Now, somehow, he had a cabin, a place, a chance. He pushed the door open. Dust motes floated through the afternoon light. The furniture was old, but solid, exactly the kind his uncle favored. On the mantel sat a framed photograph his uncle in a Vietnam-era uniform, holding a rifle, eyes sharp and alert. Beneath it lay a note written in shaky handwriting. "Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know what happened to you. I know about Karen, about Emily, about the streets. I couldn't find you in time to help, but I can help now. This place saved me after Vietnam. Maybe it can save you too. Don't give up. You're still a Marine." Semper Fi, Uncle Jack Thomas collapsed onto the floor and cried for the first time in 4 years. He spent the next 4 days cleaning, sweeping out years of dust, washing windows, fixing the porch steps. Every movement felt strange. Space, purpose, walls. On the 5th morning, voices carried through the trees, 300 meters from the cabin. Thomas stepped into a clearing and found 8 men unloading gear from 3 trucks' rifles, coolers, tents. They moved with easy confidence, the kind that came from years of repetition. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s spotted him first. His eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" Thomas's voice was rough from disuse. "I own this property. This is my land." Iman laughed. Actually laughed. "Your land? You're kidding? I inherited the cabin. I have the deed." Smile twisted into something ugly. He turned to his group. "Guys, looks like we've been trespassing." "The bum owns the place now?" The younger man smirked. "What? You find the deed in a dumpster?" Thomas pulled the folded papers from his jacket, his hands shaking as he held them out. The tall man snatched them, scanned the page, his jaw tightening. "Garrett Mitchell," he said. "Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, retired, and you, Thomas Brennan." "Well, Thomas, here's the situation. My group has hunted this land every November for 8 years. Tradition. And now you're telling me that's over because some lawyer handed you a piece of paper?" It's legal ownership. Garrett handed the deed back like it was contaminated. You know what I see? A man who couldn't handle civilian life. A quitter. And now you want to play landowner. He stepped closer. Thomas smelled expensive cologne mixed with gun oil. Where'd you serve? Marine Corps? Doing what? Supply? Admin? Scout sniper? Instructor at Quantico. The words landed hard. One of the older men straightened. Quantico. What years? 2006 to 2013. What was your call sign? Thomas hesitated, then spoke softly. Iceman. The man went pale. Jesus Christ. Iceman Brennan. Garrett's face darkened. Records. He scoffed. From a guy who's been living in the gutter for 6 years, something shifted in Thomas's eyes, cold, distant. Garrett pressed harder. Let's make this interesting. 800 meters. 5 shots. Best grouping wins. You and I pay $5,000 and leave forever? I win you. Sell me the cabin for 10 and disappear. Not interested. Of course you're not, Garrett sneered. Because you know you've lost it. Thomas stood still. Memories surfaced Steerock. 2008. Wind. Distance. 12 lives depending on a single shot. He looked at Garrett. If I win, you apologize. Publicly. If you win, I leave. Forever? Garrett grinned. Deal. What Garrett didn't know was that, at that exact moment, a Marine gunnery sergeant in Virginia was teaching sniper recruits beneath a wall of instructors past. Third from the left stood Thomas Brennan, eyes like winter ice. The targets went up. Wind, elevation, humidity, Thomas calculated it all instinctively. Garrett shot first. Solid group. Then Thomas stepped forward. His hands shook until his cheek touched the stock, and then they did. 1 shot. Dead center. Second, same hole. Third, fourth, fifth. 5 rounds. 1 hole. At 800 meters, silence swallowed the clearing. Thomas cleared the rifle and handed it back without a word. It wasn't luck, he said calmly. It was thousands of hours of training that 6 years of hell couldn't erase. That night, Thomas sat on the porch with real coffee warming his hands. He opened his old diary, blank for 6 years, and wrote, November 9th, 2019, 800 meters. 5 rounds. Proof that I'm still here. Still capable? Still Iceman. The cold night settled in, but for the first time in years. It didn't feel unbearable. And inside the cabin, his uncle's old radio crackled to life. Asterisk, he tuned the radio to a classical station. Beethoven flowed softly through the open window. Karen had loved Beethoven. I did it, Karen, he whispered into the darkness. I didn't know if I still could, but I did. Stars emerged one by one overhead. Thomas stayed on the porch until midnight before finally going inside. For the first time in 6 years, he lay on a real bed. Sleep came unevenly. The softness felt unfamiliar, but he didn't mind. He was home. At 11:47 p.m. that night, Craig Whitmore uploaded the video. He titled it, Homeless Veteran Proves True Excellence Never Fades. In the description, he wrote, Today I witnessed something I still struggle to believe. A man who lost everything reminded me that some skills, some dedication, run so deep that even 6 years of hardship can't erase them. This is Iceman. This is what mastery looks like. Craig shared it first on a veterans forum, then on YouTube, then on his wildlife photography blog with over 40,000 followers by morning. It had 5,000 views. By the next afternoon, 50,000. By the end of the week, it's over 2 million. The comments became a living tribute. I served with guys from Quantico. The stories about Iceman are legendary. That grouping at 800 meters in wind, I've shot competitively for 20 years. That's superhuman. This man trained the people who train our snipers. Show some respect. News outlets picked it up local first, then regional, then national. Homeless veteran. Impossible precision. A comeback story for the ages. Thomas saw none of it. There was no internet at the cabin. Instead, he repaired the porch, chopped wood, walked the land, relearned how to exist in space that belonged to him. On the fourth day after the challenge, a truck came up the trail. Thomas tensed and relaxed when he saw Davis Coleman step out slowly, hands visible, respectful. "Mr. Brennan." "I don't want to intrude," Davis said. "I just wanted to bring you something." He handed over a box, groceries, coffee, bread, eggs. "And I wanted to apologize," Davis added. "Garrett was out of line from the start. I should have stopped him." Thomas took the box. "You stood up when it mattered. That's enough." Davis nodded. "There's something else." The video went viral. Millions have seen it. You're famous. Thomas's jaw tightened. "I don't want to be." "I know. But people want to help. The VA contacted me. They want to offer priority care. No waiting lists." Thomas stared into the valley. "Why now? Where were they 6 years ago?" Davis had no answer. "I should also tell you Garit's gone. Closed his shop. Left town. The video destroyed him." "I didn't do it to destroy him," Thomas said quietly. "I did it to prove I was still alive." "You proved more than that," Davis replied. "You proved some things can't be taken. Not by time. Not by pain." He paused before leaving. Semper Fi, Iceman. That night, Thomas cooked eggs for dinner. Real food. He'd forgotten how good it tasted. 2 days later, another vehicle arrived. Official this time. VA emblem on the door. A woman in her 50s introduced herself. Sandra Michaels, VA patient advocate. He sat on the porch. "You were placed on a PTSD waiting list in 2014, she said plainly. "You never received follow-up. That was unacceptable. On behalf of the VA, I'm sorry." Thomas said nothing. "We're offering immediate treatment. Individual therapy. Group if you want. Medication management if needed. Fully covered? Why should I trust it this time?" "Because I'm personally responsible," she said, handing him a card. "You call, I answer." After 6 years of anger, hope felt unfamiliar. But with a roof overhead and food in his stomach, the anger felt thin. "Okay," he said. "I'll try." The card went into his wallet beside Emily's photo. The next visitor came on a Sunday. Ashley Brennan arrived with a covered dish. "I knew your uncle 30 years, she said. "He was a good man. So are you." She left him stew and an open invitation for coffee. No pressure. The therapy began 3 weeks later. It was brutal. Talking about Karen, about Emily, about the streets. Dr. Marcus Holt, a veteran himself, understood. You're carrying survivor's guilt, grief, regret. That's not weakness, it's weight. "I should have been stronger," Thomas said. "You survived 6 years on the streets and still performed at the highest level of your profession. That's extraordinary strength." Thomas didn't believe it yet, but he kept going. In December, a local shooting range offered him a part-time instructor role. He nearly refused till Dr. Holt said teaching gives purpose. Students loved him. They recognized mastery. One evening, a young woman thanked him through tears. "My dad was a Marine. He died before he could teach me." Thomas went home and cried, not from sadness, but from something he hadn't felt in years. Value. By March, the video passed 8 million views. Donations surged. Senators referenced it. Outreach programs gained funding. Thomas knew none of it. Then a letter arrived. Emily's handwriting. He sat for 15 minutes before opening it. Dad, she'd seen the video. Not the shooting, but him. Alive. Still himself. She forgave him, she explained. She said she never stopped loving him. "If you want to see me, I'm in Charlotte. I just want to know you're okay." Thomas read it 7 times. The next morning, he bought stationery. "Sunday, 2 p.m., I have coffee now. I'll be waiting." Sunday came. At 1:58 p.m., a silver Honda climbed the trail. Emily stepped out, terrified and hopeful. Dad. M. They ran to each other. 6 years collapsed into one embrace. "I'm sorry," She sobbed. "No," he said fiercely. "I'm sorry." They cried. They forgave. Life rebuilt itself quietly after that. Thomas taught. He healed. He loved. He waited for Sundays. On a cool October night, he wrote in his diary, "Iceman is still here. But so is Dad. So is Thomas. All of me, finally, whole." The night air was gentle. The cabin warm. Tomorrow, he'd teach. Next Sunday, Emily would visit. He was no longer lost. No longer alone. He was home. And under the stars, Thomas understood, true excellence isn't perfection. It's resilience. It's standing back up. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing of all.